Well, good morning, everybody. This is the news that we are waking up to for Friday, February 21st, 2025, day 1094 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine, and day 41 of the subversion of the U.S. federal system by malign foreign powers in the re-election of the person of Donald Trump. I'm Peter Alexievich, and last night it was loud. If you were on the live, you know it was loud. You could hear it. Air defense was active throughout the live. The Russians sent 160 drones and decoys. Of the 160, 157 were either shot down or neutralized with active countermeasures for a 98% interception rate. God bless the mobile defense units, boy. God bless them. Now, it's a little early to say just how important this is. But I do think this is a heads up. This is something to watch because it's an evolving situation. We have this incredible tension now between Europe and the United States as Donald Trump has shown himself to be a creature of the Kremlin. Right? One 90-minute phone call with Vladimir Putin, and a couple days later, Volodymyr Zelensky started the war, is responsible for running the war, has absconded with all this money, and is the sole villain in this play. He's an unelected dictator with a 4% approval rating. It goes without saying that none of that is true. It is Russian disinformation coming from the commander-in-chief of the United States Armed Forces. We have just seen a global realignment of the axis of evil, which is now Pyongyang, Moscow, Tehran, and Washington, D.C. It's a problem. And Europe is scrambling. The passive, prosperous Europe that allowed for so long its security to be managed by the United States now is suddenly realizing it doesn't have a partner. It is betrayed. It is not just Ukraine that is betrayed. It is not just NATO that is betrayed. It is not just the EU and all of our greatest allies that are betrayed. I would remind everybody that it is the American people that have been betrayed by their own unenlightened short-term self-interest, their own prejudice, their own ignorance, their own failure to adapt to this brave new world that we are all living in. Which I would point out, we don't say that enough, right? That we are living in a world that no one has ever lived in. And the bad guys are doing a great job of taking advantage of this new world for their own benefit. And that's a problem. That's a problem we all got to deal with. Now, the Romanian Parliment, which is the august body you see in this photograph, may have just taken an important step forward in European security. On this channel, we've been screaming literally for a year that we need air defense support from our NATO partners on the borders, right? We've seen missiles, we've seen drones, helicopters, and jets enter the airspace of other sovereign nations, Romania, Slovakia, Poland. We saw a couple of Polish farmers killed when missile debris landed on them near the Ukrainian border. It should be the policy of these neighbors of ours to shoot down missiles that enter their airspace or that threaten to enter their airspace. It should be the policy of our NATO partners to have a no-fly zone west of the Dnipro so that we don't see food burning in the port of Odessa, so we don't see drones slamming into the dome of the Chernobyl nuclear reactor, so that we don't see apartment complexes and hospitals and schools targeted by these genocidal lunatics in the Kremlin. We should be able to have those things. And there has been no political will from Ukraine's partners and neighbors to do any of that. That tide may finally be turning. Now, the Romanian system, as I understand it, is very much like the American system. There's a lower house and an upper house. right? So 2 chambers, a bicameral legislature, and then the executive branch. And the process of drafting bills, passing bills is very similar. Got to pass both the House and the Senate, got to pass both houses in Romania. Then it's got to be signed by the president. So when I say that this is just the first step in a process to watch that I think is it's just like with the tanks. Remember when nobody would send Ukraine tanks? And then Great Britain did, right? Great Britain really deserves a lot of credit in this whole conflict for leading the way. You got to give them credit. They might still have a fucking king, but at least he doesn't have the power to make the mess that Donald Trump is making. He doesn't have nearly that kind of power, and he's an actual monarch. Anyway, the lower house of the Romanian Parliament just passed a bill that would let the military in Romania use either non-kinetic or kinetic warfare to deal with incoming aerial threats. What does that mean? It means the military would be empowered to watch the skies. And if a drone is coming at them, they can try to take it off course with electronic warfare, or they can shoot the motherfucker down. Now, these drones are packed with explosives. You do not want them coming into your country. The Romanians should have every right to do this on their border. And it looks as though the needle may finally be moving on that. And that's a big change. And it could mark, now, of course, we have to see. Is it going to get through the Senate? It's expected to. Will the president sign it? It's expected that he will. So we'll see, right? Politics is very confusing. But this could be a step in the right direction that, like when the British first sent Challengers, could be a watershed movement, right? Because immediately after Britain said they would send Challengers, the U.S. said they would send Abrams, and then Germany was sending Leopards, and etc. If Romania starts shooting shit down, why wouldn't Poland, Slovakia, Moldova follow? I think it only makes sense that they would and should. But we'll see. And maybe we'll finally get a no-fly zone west of the Dnipro, huh? That'd be nice. Now, I want to amplify the message from this guy, Dmitry Tishetsky, who's a Ukrainian soldier who posted this message on Instagram, and you can follow him there. America, I have a question for you. You chose Donald Trump as your president. You're not wrong, but there are extenuating circumstances, at any rate. And today your president picked up the phone and called the world's #1 terrorist not to demand justice, not to hold him accountable, but to talk, to negotiate, to treat him like a legitimate leader. So tell me, how do you feel about that? He goes on to ask, would you have accepted a president who called bin Laden after 9/11? Would you have justified sitting down with ISIS? Because that's exactly what just happened. And the gentleman could not be more right, nor accurate, nor concise in his argument here. That is precisely what has happened. One telephone call with Vladimir Putin, and Trump is exposed as the creature of the Kremlin that he is, spouting Russian disinformation and lies in the face of known truths. It's a watershed moment, guys. The American federal system has been subverted by Moscow. This is a watershed moment for the world. And we are seeing it writ large in the betrayal of our closest allies and friends. Now, not everybody feels this way, right? The Europeans are stepping up their support for Ukraine. The Europeans are aligning in a way that I don't know that we would have seen them do without this external threat. Donald Tusk, president of Poland, says, enough talking, it's time to act. 1, let's finance our aid for Ukraine from the Russian frozen assets. Hell yeah, Donald. Let's grab that money. Very little of which is in the U.S., by the way. So I don't see how Trump is going to affect any of that, right? It's a good point to make. They should get ahead of this thing. They should seize that money before Trump tries to pull some shit and get his hands on it for Vladimir. Let's strengthen air policing, the Baltic Sentry, and the EU borders with Russia. Baltic Sentry is the NATO mission to guard the undersea infrastructure in the Baltic, which may have come under attack again today. We have word of a Finnish-German cable that has been damaged. Both Sweden and Finland have already opened investigations. Germany will likely do so in the next few hours. We don't know what happened there, by the way, but that's what Baltic Sentry is. It's a NATO operation to secure Baltic undersea infrastructure. Let's swiftly adopt new fiscal rules to finance EU security and defense now. Hella yeah. Hella yeah. Because you guys were cut out of the negotiations. Putin and Trump thought that they could sit down and divide up the world. Now, if Europe comes up with the money that the U.S. was coming up with, the U.S., like its pariah partner Russia, is irrelevant. Donald Trump, by selling the nation and the world out to Putin, has made the United States input on peace negotiations here irrelevant. Nobody will want to talk to us, and indeed, why should they? And then, like a gangster, he threatens the rare earth deal. You better sign that deal or you won't have a country. Nice country, be ashamed if something happened to it. The sum of U.S. foreign policy right now. Outrageous. We're getting word on this. Politico is reporting, now citing Ukrainian officials, I want to stress that Zelensky can save his relationship with Trump and the U.S. only if he signs the proposed mineral deal, which he should not do. It's economic servitude to the United States. It's U.S. economic colonial expansion. The United States has no business being in charge of the natural resources of this nation. No business at all. We're in the business of business. We should be making deals with the Ukrainians that own those resources and paying fair market value. Now, 20% discount, right, for some other favors might be in line for us. I'm not saying it wouldn't. But this bullshit deal of Trump's, you got to be fucking kidding me. What world is he on? It's ridiculous. Now, we just saw Vogel return to the United States, right? We saw Evan Gershkovich return. If you remember, Trump during the election said that if he were president, he'd have Evan Gershkovich out of jail in 24 hours. Now, he didn't put because he and Putin are such good friends. Now, he didn't put that to the test as a candidate and violate the Logan Act, right? Although he did it 100 times for other things that benefited himself. So he didn't call Putin, get Evan Gershkovich out. Vogel came home on his watch. It's true. But ladies and gentlemen, there are still at least 10, maybe 12. I'm seeing conflicting reports. There are at least 10 Americans still in custody. And I would point out especially here, Ksenia Karolina, the one woman you see there. She's her family's from Russia. I believe she was born in Russia. But she's an American. She's a ballet dancer and dental hygienist or what's the guy the person that helps around the medical office, not the dental office, like not a nurse, but anyway, she works in healthcare and has been a ballet dancer. She's been in custody now for 1 year, And I believe that that's the first year of her 17-year sentence at some Russian gulag nightmare hellhole. Now, the stories of the Americans that I could find and verify are in a Word file attachment, or actually I'll downgrade it. I'll downgrade it to a TXT so that you don't have any formatting to worry about. It'll work with any reader. And this file you can download here, and it gives the personal histories and the stories of each of the 10 that I'm sure are still in Russian custody. And then there's a contact at the White House, at the top for the White House. If Donald Trump is such good friends with Vladimir Putin that after one phone call, he has handed the entire country of Ukraine to Putin, except the part he intends to tear out for himself, then certainly he can get those 10 folks out of jail and home again, can he? I mean, he and Putin are such good friends, and we've given Putin so much already. Wouldn't it be great if we could make that work for us and get these Americans home? So anyway, that file is down there near the description. You can download it. It's attached to this video. Okay, now look, I want to start out by saying Elon Musk did not say any of this. He didn't. He did not say any of this. I'm not claiming he did. This is an example of a lie that goes around the internet. But it's a lie worth looking at, right? Because if you're interested in surviving in the 21st century world of the internet, you have to be able to, A, spot the lies, which is not easy. Because I must have read this thing 100 times, and I'm like, you know, he could have said this. He could have said this. But he didn't, right? I very much want to say that. So let's just look at the words here, knowing that Elon Musk did not say this. Here's the hard truth. This country's billionaires are tired of subsidizing everyone else's schools, parks, healthcare, even food and entertainment. You want nature, buy some land. Healthcare, befriend a doctor. Entertainment, roll around in the mud with your fellow pigs. Now look, no billionaire talks this way, right? And he did not talk. I want to be very clear. He did not say this. We know that is a fact. And we spend a lot of time on this channel talking about disambiguating Russian disinformation, seeing through the lies with evidence. And yet, one of the people who follows my channel sent me this. And I think they thought it was real. So that's a little disappointing to me, right? Like, I would expect that before anybody sends me anything that knows anything about this channel, you would either send it to me and say, hey, this is not real, but I thought you might be interested in looking at it, which I was very interested in looking at it. Or is this real, right? Like just last night, Nicola Jones and we couldn't figure out whether or not the U.S. has stopped selling weapons to Ukraine. That claim was made by somebody in the Ukrainian Parliament here yesterday. And then it was refuted by another official source here in Kyiv last night. And there seems, now it could be that Ukraine's been threatened with an aid stoppage, and that's gotten out. Certainly Trump is pissed about the rejection of the rare earth minerals deal, right? So it's hard to say what's going on there. I still don't have a clear picture. So it's hard to know what's true and what's not true on the internet, right? We know that this is false. But let's look at it. Because billionaires don't say this. Republicans say this. I've had this kind of argument thrown at me by every Republican I've known. This idea, we're tired of subsidizing everybody else's schools. I don't have kids. Why should I pay for their school? Why should I pay property taxes to fund the school when I don't have any kids? How many times have you heard a Republican make that kind of argument? Well, gosh, I don't know. Maybe because you don't want neighbors who are poor and stupid. You don't want neighbors who don't have a future because they didn't get an education. You don't want to have neighbors who are looking because they don't have an education at you because there's something different about you and maybe looking to do violence upon you because of it in their ignorance from a lack of education. We live in a society. Everybody's got to contribute. And nobody more than the billionaires, which we'll talk about in 1 second. You want nature? Buy some land. Bullshit. Bullshit. We have the most incredible national parks programs in the world. We have preserved the natural beauty, the ecological system that cleans our air and gives us fresh oxygen, that scours our water of toxins to keep it flowing clean, that provides the biodiversity of a healthy environmental system. The few changes, the reintroduction of wolves into Yellowstone National Park changed the course of rivers. And if you don't know that story, Google that shit because it's a great story. And it's not a story, it's the natural consequence of following science. Preserving the natural order of things in the world and studying it so that we understand how this planet works and we can manage it as we are asked to do in the first reading of Genesis, right? To manage this garden, which is the only garden we have, this little blue marble. Healthcare, befriend a doctor. Healthcare is a human right. That's why I put up with all of you, because we have doctors and science and medicine. And that's a hard thing to get. You need a lot of minds and a lot of funding and a lot of time and a lot of research to do any of the things that doctors do today in this age of miracles and wonders every single day as if it was normal that people don't die at 35. And then entertainment. I mean, a healthy cultural life is the beating heart of any civilization. These narcissistic libertarians want to deny the reality that we live in, that civilization is a real thing, that we live in a civilization, and that civilization is fragile. It's fragile. It's estimated that if as little as 3.5% of the population becomes parasitic on that society, it will collapse. Just 3.5%. That's all it takes. Republicans are about 28% of the electorate. And this is their mantra. Now, I want to, and that's just what we hear from the middle class Republicans, right? I don't have kids. My kids are grown. Why should I pay for the schools? Then we extrapolate from this the billionaire, the real narcissist billionaire perspective. Musk, Bezos, all these guys. They made their money, their billions, because of the system we have. The public internet does not belong to them. They did not create it. They simply found a business that would work on that public internet. That public internet that was paid for by you and I. That back when America believed in science, believed in research, believed in pushing the frontiers of what we know, not because we knew what would come out of it, but because we didn't. We, the American taxpayer, built the public internet. It belongs to us. If Jeff Bezos comes along and makes a new business model that puts the rest of Main Street America out of business, then the idea should be that we tax the shit out of Jeff Bezos and we reinvest that money into converting Main Street America into something new that works and is profitable in the age of the 21st century internet. That's what we have to do. That's how this system works. That's why in the 1950s, If you made over $5 million, every dollar you made over $5 million was taxed at 90%. So we had a minimum wage that was a living wage, intended to be a living wage, that anybody could survive on and raise a family on. And then we had a maximum salary cap, essentially, so that we don't have these super rich assholes who think they can buy and sell other people. You have people who have benefited the most from the system that we have, putting the most back into it, reinvesting the most back into it. That's the New Deal. That's the deal that made the 20th century the American century. And now we have these assholes who benefited the most from it, rather than contributing back to it, want to make sure that nobody else ever gets a shot but them. Musk, SpaceX, he didn't do any of that. He just copied NASA. NASA's been doing it for 20 years. Our lack of funding of space exploration made it possible for a private enterprise to take over the bullshit daily maintenance routines that NASA had perfected 20 years ago, because we haven't gone any farther, right? That shit should have been turned over to private industry 15 years ago, and we should be building a base on the moon right now. But we gave that all up in 1988 when Congress, Republican Congress, canceled the funding. The money was already appropriated for the superconducting super collider in Texas. If we had built that thing, we'd have had the Higgs boson 15 years ago. It's a sin. It's a travesty. It's an abandonment of what we know works in a modern technological age. This is what works. And these bastards are tearing it all down. Even though I want to be clear, he did not say this. Okay. So guys, that's it for me. I think that's the news that we are waking up to for Friday, the 21st of February, 2025, day 1094 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine, and day 41 of the Trump nightmare. I'm Peter Alexievich, and I will see you on the live at 5 tonight.